back on another true crime format. It is about the tragic case of Siona Foster, who has been killed by her cousin. Our thanks goes to Kevin from Just Thought Launch, who has kindly given his okay for us to use his great video, his great footage. And if you're interested, just have a look at Kevin's YouTube channel. It's really great. He has a lot of wonderful videos, very interesting. So feel free to dig into the world of true crime. I'm Dr. Ebner. For those who don't know me, I'm an international lawyer, active globally with a focus on the US and Western Europe. And today I'm trying to share my experience with you about how law enforcement, judges, and public prosecutors um, maybe think and treat cases, and also trying to compare this US case with potential scenarios in Western Europe or Asia. Okay, let's get started.
Last message that 17-year-old Zion Foster sent before she disappeared stated that she was on her way home. The teenager told her mother and boyfriend that she was going out that night with her favorite cousin, something that she did at least twice a month. But when her mother sought him out for help finding her the next day, the cousin delivered some surprising news. That he had not seen or spoken to Zion, he said, in years. Hi there, I'm Kevin, and welcome to Just Thought Lounge. Today we're taking a look at a missing persons turned murder case. It's a story about a family and disturbing revelations about who you can trust. Let's take a look. Mother of 6, Sierra Milton, awoke on the 5th of January 2022 to find that her eldest, Zion Foster, had not returned home the night before. Zion was a 12th grader at East Detroit High School. She had only just celebrated her 17th birthday in November. Like most teenagers, Zion had experienced a rebellious streak. She had threatened to run away from home and had even done so the year before, twice. 16 years old and frustrated with her mother's rules, she had run to her grandmother's house. Convinced to return home, she remained for only a few days before leaving again. That time causing enough concern for Sierra to call the police. But it was another false alarm. The teenager was struggling with her granny's recent cancer diagnosis, as well as her own desire for independence. That January morning was different. Zion had completed her serving shift at the Detroit Wing Company the night before. She had asked permission to leave the house after returning home from work. The teenager was honest about who she would be spending time with, her favorite cousin, Jalen. Under these conditions, Sierra agreed and watched Zion walk out the door. That was shortly before 11 p.m. The next day, the 17-year-old's boyfriend, fellow high schooler Vertez Gonzalez, messaged Sierra. Had she heard from Zion because he could no longer reach her? The last text message that he received was at 12:59 a.m. It read OMW, meaning on my way. But Zion didn't make it home. Calls to her phone went straight to voicemail. Messages sent throughout the night were not being received. Finally, at 8:53 a.m.
Mobiles are the best friends of modern law enforcement. You can track people. A lot of criminals get convicted because they had their mobiles with them. And it really helps in missing person cases as well. So as you can see, the time window is really restricted to um, an extent that you can really work with as law enforcement. But unfortunately, missing person cases are often not really dealt with diligently by law enforcement, as we will hear soon.
He wrote to her, "Are you alive?" Followed by, this is the worst thing ever. Adding to the distress over Zion's absence was the response Sierra received from her cousin, Jalen Brazier. Despite what her daughter had told her, Jalen responded that he had not been with Zion the night before. He asked Sierra exactly how often had Zion claimed that she was spending time with him. Once or twice a month, she said. He messaged her back in frustration. Zion's lies about him were sneaky as hell and not safe, he said. But why lie about spending time at his house? He suggested that she was likely spending time with someone who lived near to him. Zion shared location tracking on her phone with boyfriend Vertez. This tracking had placed her just across the street from Jalen's home at 11:24 p.m. the night before. Vertez, admittedly a bit insecure in their relationship, had taken a screenshot of his girlfriend's location at exactly that time. Jalen suggested that perhaps Zion was using him as a cover story when she was in fact at a neighbor's house. She must know someone else on the street or nearby. Jalen helpfully suggested that.
So luckily, the criminal here is probably not the brightest one. He's digging his own grave. He's saying more and more and more and giving information that can easily be proven as wrong. So that is a good scenario. We sometimes have cases or see scenarios um, where potential criminals or suspects are not saying anything at all, and you don't have the information where a potential victim has been when the crime happened. So luckily, here we have a criminal that is not really thinking about what he's doing.
Sierra go to the police, but he requested to be kept out of it. Vertez was not as easily persuaded. He inundated Jalen with messages. He confronted the 23-year-old with a screenshot from his phone. In response, Jalen sent back a video of his Ring camera system. There were no entries showing Zion at the house, he said. She was never there. East Point police were not inclined to take Sierra's missing persons report with any sense of urgency. Her daughter had a history of being a runaway. According to the distressed mother, officers at the station did not mince words.
The person that's over it now specifically said to us that, I'm going to be honest with you, we're taking this as she's a runaway.
Receiving little support from law enforcement.
Yes, unfortunately, that's pretty much the same in Europe. We often see law enforcement police not being interested at all if a person is missing, especially if it is an adult. A police usually says things like, "Well, that's an adult; they can be wherever they want to be, and there is no hint whatsoever that this could be a crime situation." So that is quite sad. I mean, on the one side, it's you can understand that because these are quite typical situations. There are a lot of missing person reports, and the person gets found quite quickly again. Um, yeah, but if you really have a crime and police is not acting, that's terrible, of course.
She took matters into her own hands. With the assistance of family and friends, a search effort for Zion was launched in the following days. They posted flyers, held rallies, and spoke to the media.
We need your eyes. The police need your help.
That's right.
We need your help.
In the
That is really the only thing you can do as a family. You can really try to put pressure on them, get to the public, and maybe hire a lawyer so that a lawyer contacts police and law enforcement as well, so that they really get forced to get active.
meantime, officers were eventually sent out to speak with Jalen Brazier. Jalen, Zion's self-professed favorite cousin, was in fact first cousins with her former stepfather. That is, he was cousins with Sierra's ex-husband. At 23, he was a father to 2 young children, and he had a long-term partner, Katrina. Sierra believed that her daughter and Jalen had always been and remained close. According to Jalen, they hadn't spoken in years. They found him at home with girlfriend Katrina Smith.
How you doing? What's going on, man? You Mr. Brazier?
Yes, sir.
What's your name, ma'am? Okay. You guys know Zion?
Yes.
So, they were saying...
Jalen invited the officers in to look around the house. He told them that he had last seen his cousin nearly a year.
All right, that is great. In the US, you can film something like that, talking to a suspect. In Europe, especially in Germany, you would never be allowed to do that because of data protection reasons, whatsoever, personal rights of a suspect. So that is a good thing because it gives law enforcement the chance and the court and the jury to have a look at it personally. On the other side, the suspect does not act in his interest if he lets law enforcement into the house, into the flat. Of course, people think, well, if I'm acting as if nothing has happened, that would help my case if I'm trying to show that I'm open for cooperation. But usually it only hurts persons. So luckily again that a suspect acted not wise in that situation. It would probably be the best if he would not have let them into the flat and not talk to law enforcement at all.
Before, in May 2021. Jalen continued to explain that it was Zion's mother and her boyfriend that seemed fixated on the idea that she had been with him that night. He had offered to show his ring camera footage to Sierra as well. When she took a look at it, the mother thought that there were gaps in entries for footage for the night of January 4th, which had obviously been deleted.
Never here, but her location did say she was here in the house across the street. I was like, but she was never here. I don't know. But anyway, I got cameras to show that she was never here.
East Point police found nothing suspicious in the search of the house. There were no indications that Zion had been there. They listened while Jalen explained his frustrations over being pulled into the drama caused by his 17-year-old cousin, with whom he rarely spends any time.
The times when I left is when I took her to work and we came back, went to get gas. Just basically showing this girl was never in my house. So
We believe you, man.
and she's known to be a runaway. Like she's ran like 4 times, and every time she got some dude's house. Her mom knows this. Her mom's just playing it a certain way, and it's making me so fucking uncomfortable.
She's known to be a runaway?
Yes, I would assume you guys would know that. Not saying like you're not doing your job, just assume she would tell you the damn information.
Now we know. Appreciate it. All right, guys. Enjoy the rest of your night.
So here you say they heard the word runaway and case closed. So that is very typical. That happens often in practice. Once you have such a label, it's very difficult to get law enforcement authorities interested in a missing case, in a missing person report again.
Jalen may have been fooling the East Point police at this stage, but not Sierra Milton. She did indeed watch to see who her daughter left with from the house, and she often greeted Jalen herself in the drive when he came by to collect her. She knew he was lying.
He told me he hadn't seen or been in contact with her for 3 years, which is impossible when you were in my driveway and gave me a hug.
Perhaps the easiest way to verify if Zion had been across the street from her cousin's house, as her location data suggested, was to check the neighbor's doorbell cameras. At about 11:15 p.m. on January 4th, A white sedan, the car known to be driven by Jalen Brazier, was captured pulling into his drive. Emerging from the vehicle were two individuals, clearly seen walking into the house, one male and one female. Jalen had driven Katrina to work at just before 11 p.m. that night. She was on the midnight shift at a manufacturing job. The shift spanned from 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. The second individual who entered the house at 11:15 could not have been Katrina. Phone location data would later confirm the two individuals captured entering the home, Jalen Brazier and Zion Foster. The camera did not show Zion leaving.
All right, that's it. So game over for Mr. Brazier. That is very compelling. And now law enforcement has to do something, and they have their suspect. And yeah, now we know that he has lied, and that's the beginning of the end. So he will not get away with it anymore after that.
At 1:41 a.m., the same camera from across the street captured Jalen pulling his car out of the drive and then backing it in. The trunk then faced the backyard. After a few minutes, the car drove off. It returned to the house less than 10 minutes later. Search warrants were obtained for the house and the car. Inside the house, the search was fruitless. The contents of the car were carefully itemized and examined, but there was no clear evidence indicating what had happened to Zion. That is, until law enforcement brought in the cadaver dogs. The dogs clearly indicated at the trunk of Jalen's car.
Strong evidence, strong evidence. Juries, judges, authorities believe in cadaver dogs, and they are usually quite reliable. So, rock solid, rock solid.
On January 19th, the 23-year-old, accompanied by a friend who was a lawyer, voluntarily sat down with detectives. It was clear that he had lied about being with Zion on the night that she disappeared. Jalen came forward to offer what he claimed was a truthful version of events from that night. He had picked up Zion from her home and brought her back to his place. He put his two children, boys aged 1 and 2 years old, to bed, then joined Zion downstairs in the living room.
You guys mix up your weed, you roll up, you guys start smoking, you're just watching TV, just chilling?
Yeah, she's telling me about how her and mom, their relationship's a lot better than it was the last time she talked to us. And about her boyfriend, about prom, the job and everything, and how she's working on getting an apartment and everything.
Jalen said they smoked some marijuana, which appeared to make Zion very sleepy. He saw her head tilt back, as though she intended to take a nap while sitting upright on the couch. At that point, he went into the other room to pour himself a drink.
Now, you guys are just chilling, and that's all of a sudden she just blanks out right there?
When I got up to go get me something to drink,
Yeah.
I came back and she was saying she was tired and everything, and she laid her head back. So, okay, I'm let you go to sleep for a bit or whatever.
Okay.
And then about 15 to 20 minutes after that, I was like, okay, are you good? You ready to go home? And she wasn't responding or any of that.
Was her plan to go back home?
Jalen reported that Zion's pulse was faint. Then he described her heartbeat as non-existent. His young cousin had said,
Another big mistake of the suspect. It's useless talking to the detectives. They have already made up their mind. You see the body language of the officer who has his hands on his head, what maybe says, I don't believe you at all. Um, Again, he's digging his own grave. Luckily in that case, but you should never ever do that as a suspect. You should not. Maybe you should think twice if you talk to law enforcement at all.
simply died on his couch, he said. Instead of contacting 911, he panicked. Not knowing how she died, he thought it would appear as though he had killed her.
Her heartbeat was getting very, very faint, and her breathing was like non-existent. So, and mind you,
All of it other than that, I smoked.
this looks terrible. This looks very bad. I didn't know what to do. So I took her, I put her into my trunk, and I put her in my trunk.
Okay.
In my car. And I took her to Highland Park.
It's a very weird situation. I don't know if that person is actually a lawyer. Doesn't really behave like a lawyer, is not dressed like a lawyer. But a competent lawyer probably would never ever let his client, the suspect, talk about that at all. I mean, the lawyer could talk, you could hand in a written version. I mean, that version is ridiculous, yeah, telling that a young woman just suddenly died in his house. But that is really a crazy situation if you look at that. If you look at that officer and if you look at that so-called lawyer and at the suspect. So it's really weird.
And put her inside of a trash can, and then I left.
Detectives queried how Jalen knew that Zion was dead. According to his story, the 17-year-old had inexplicably, very abruptly, stopped breathing.
The head's back on the couch. If she's still alive at that point, he should probably just hide or whatever, from the, lead. And then you start shaking her. She doesn't wake up. You check her pulse, you said, and you can see she's not breathing, nothing like that. So at that point, what are you doing?
Freaking out.
Okay, so you're freaking out, and this whole time you've been home.
So at that point in time, we thought she was definitely dead.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, was she dead? Do you think she was dead at that point, or does she still just have pain breathing and?
It wasn't anything.
There was nothing at that point.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know the difference between dead and alive, right?
I mean,
Was she
not
dead?
breathing. She wasn't breathing, so I assumed that was dead. Her heartbeat was like, I couldn't read a heartbeat, couldn't feel a heartbeat or anything. So I would say she was dead, definitely.
Okay.
Now I want to have you.
If you should get a public defender who is acting like that lawyer, you should maybe run away quite quickly. It seems as if he is joining forces with law enforcement and asking his client things he thinks are crucial. But it does not seem that both of them have talked about how they would act in that situation probably. So again, it's unbelievable.
Show us the dumpster, okay?
Definitely.
Because I don't want to mistake it, and I want to obviously get out there and see if she's still there, then we need to recover her, and if not, then we need to do the steps to locate where she's at.
Okay.
Okay? You're okay with that?
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right.
Jalen led detectives to the dumpsters in Highland Park, where he claimed to have left Zion's body weeks before. Jalen told detectives that Zion had been at his home for roughly 2 hours before she died. This would have placed her time of death at just past 1 a.m. Cell phone records showed her device drop off the network at 1:15 a.m., corresponding to the time that she stopped responding to messages from Vertez. Jalen told detectives that he had not deleted any data from his device since the night of Zion's death. They found, however, that he had conducted a full factory reset of his phone just 2 days later, effectively wiping everything held on his device. Nonetheless, the movements of his phone could be pieced together. This data placed Jalen at the dumpsters at Highland Park at 1:48 a.m. He claimed to have placed her in the dumpster to the right. There was no longer any sign of her.
What do you think? How high are your chances to get out of something like that if you tell law enforcement that you have thrown a dead young woman into a dumpster? If you go to a court of law, if you have to talk to a jury, even if it has happened, it does not help you. That you will get convicted. There is no way around it. And the burden on proof, it's on the state. The law enforcement has to prove what has happened. So that again maybe shows that it is really a golden rule. If you are a suspect in a criminal case, don't say anything. Go to a lawyer, let the lawyer talk, look for a competent lawyer, and think twice if you say anything. You don't have to say anything. You have your Miranda laws.
Her there.
Rights. Miranda law rights.
I'm gonna walk up to you, okay?
Yes. It's already open. Yes. Yes. Yes.
Where did you park your car?
Right by it, right in front of it.
I'm sorry.
I said right in front of it.
Did you back into it or did you pull forward? So you were side by side? Okay.
He said that my baby just died. And then that he threw her in a dumpster. Like she was trash.
When Jalen sat down for a follow-up interview the next day, January 20th, inconsistencies began to emerge in his story. He now claimed that the two had taken...
And that's standard. Inconsistencies always emerge if you talk to law enforcement, because law enforcement is trained for that, and they will ask you that long until inconsistencies turn up. So luckily, a lot of criminals are maybe not that intelligent, so that is good for society. But here again, he is already represented by a lawyer. I cannot understand why that lawyer allows him to talk anymore. It doesn't get better with that. It only gets worse.
acid that night. It was her response to the psychedelics that must have caused her heart to stop. Of course, this explanation was about as likely as his previous assertion that the marijuana had caused her death. The detective attempted to leverage these new claims to compel a confession. Perhaps Jalen would use the drugs as an excuse for his actions, for whatever steps he took to kill his younger cousin.
I was trying like psychedelics, like acid, and
Okay.
I think that's what killed her.
Do you? Did you have like a freaking momentary, like, didn't know what you were doing moment?
No. She also she took a time herself.
But let me ask you this. The problem with those drugs are, when you're on them, you don't know what you're doing. I mean, that's the reason people take them, right? Did you do something when you were, because again, I'm trying to figure this out, and that would make complete sense. When you dropped acid, did you have, I'm not saying it's okay, but.
I was completely comforted. Completely. I just think, I don't know if the effect for her was positive, or, because I know it does a lot in your brain. And like,
Yeah, it does a lot. I'm going to tell you right now, it makes sense to me now. It all makes sense to me. You understand that, right?
A lot of people always think that police officers are not allowed to lie. They are allowed to lie. They are allowed to lie to you when you are a suspect. Pretty much the same in Europe as well. They do it a lot, and their aim is to find people that get convicted. So they are not neutral. The question is, why should you talk to them anyhow if they are not neutral and if they try to get you convicted? It's as simple as that. But still, a lot of people, they just talk, and they think they can talk them out of such a situation. You cannot talk yourself out of such a situation. No way. So all odds are against you.
I'm sitting here trying to figure out how this nice young guy, Jay, could ever hurt anybody. But it makes sense to me now. It's not you. That's not Jay at that point. You understand that, right?
Yeah.
If you did something under the influence, that I need to know that, because that's a big difference, and I can understand that. That I can appreciate.
The detective failed to elicit a confession. Without this admission and without locating Zion, there was not enough evidence to proceed with an indictment for murder. Jalen was placed under arrest and held in custody for one count of lying to police.
The statements he made to police, actively deceiving them on the whereabouts of Zion Foster, the health and safety of Zion Foster, and his interaction with her.
In June of that year, Jalen spoke with detectives again. This time, only the audio was recorded. At that time, he changed his story once more. Jalen recanted his claim that the two had taken acid that night. That part was not true. Other smaller details of the story changed as well. He no longer described Zion as passed out on the couch. Now she was on the floor. He said that he had felt pressured by police to offer.
Nobody in a court of law will ever believe in his words again. And where is his lawyer? Why is he talking alone to that detective? It is unbelievable.
For more information, so he made up a more elaborate story to appease them.
Well, I left that out about the LSD, but yeah, we both took a hit of LSD, and it must have hit her different or hit her wrong. Did you say it bullshit to him, or did he? See, I'm saying he's telling me that. I'm trying to say, is he telling me bullshit that he didn't say, or did you?
No, that's why I feel. Okay, I feel pressure to just throw something out there before I get out.
Garbage collection trucks working in Highland Park were tracked to specified areas in local landfills. The task of sorting through mounds of trash from all over the Detroit area and compiled over several weeks was a daunting undertaking. An estimated 8-week project was launched. Dozens of volunteers, mostly wearing masks and hazmat suits and assisted by heavy machinery, picked through layer after layer of the landfill systematically, looking for any sign of Zion.
We expect phase one to take approximately 2 weeks, but we're doing what's right for the right reasons, and we're going to do everything we possibly can to bring some degree of closure. Will never be complete closure, but some degree of closure and justice to this family.
Meanwhile, Jalen Brazier faced up to 4 years in prison for the lies he had told police.
That is strong. That would never have happened in Europe. I also think not in Asia. For 4 years for lying, because usually if you're a suspect, you're allowed to lie as well to protect yourself. So that is strong, and we will see that it is maybe also a strategy of law enforcement to have their thumb on him and to get more incriminating information, more evidence against him once he is in jail.
The Detroit Police Department, the DPD, assisted by the FBI, continued to seek a warrant for murder. Jalen pled his case to the judge at his sentencing.
One, I did turn myself in. Yes, I lied, but I was not in the right state of mind. There was no way for me to prepare for a situation like that. I was scared. I don't know exactly how she passed, what caused her to pass. I just know 1 minute she was cool, she was fine, she laid back for a minute. Next thing I know, she was dead. I don't know what caused it. I did not cause it or anything like that. I reacted stupidly off of fear and panic like I've never felt before in my life. Literally.
You think she dies and then you dispose of the body?
Passive aggressive. If a judge asks you such a question, you know you are in trouble. Yeah, you will not get a good judgment here.
Just like that. That was your choice.
Did not know what to do. I sat for at least 10 minutes sitting there. Like, what do I do? Who do I call?
It gets worse and worse and worse. I also don't understand that lawyer. He should not let him talk. It gets worse, and also crying. Crying does not help. A judge doesn't care if you cry. They already have their opinion of you. So
my kids are upstairs. We just got into this place after struggling for like 2 years to get it, and everything is falling down.
I won't have any conversation in this phone.
And I wish I could take it back. I would have called the ambulance, called her mom, because her mom's so sweet. Her mom is so sweet. And I just know. I wish I could take it back. Nobody been in the situation. At the very least, they'd be able to be like, okay, this happened, confirm this. And everybody has some sort of peace right now, you know? But
Jalen Brazier was sentenced to 23 months in prison. Jalen's phone calls home to girlfriend Katrina and other family members were monitored closely while he was in custody. Occasionally, he would use another inmate's calling code to make his phone calls, in a failed attempt to keep his conversations private. He was also in possession of a prohibited cell phone, which he used to exchange thousands of messages with Katrina. Repeatedly in his calls, Jalen would ask if anything.
Once you are in jail and you are a suspect in such a case, you get monitored, and that will not go away from one day to another. So big mistake again that while being monitored, he is saying things he should maybe not say. So people should be aware of that once they are in the limelight and they are held as suspects in such a high profile case. Law enforcement will look at them for a longer time, and they will look at them closely.
Major happened. This seemed to be a poorly concealed attempt to ask whether the massive search of the landfill had located anything, or anyone.
The most logical and possible one, right? Is that there's nothing major or new, and due to that, there's a last effort to put together any types of anything, and that's basically the most logical thing that I came up statistically. So,
I do want you to know. Keep your head up. Don't say nothing. You could deny.
Of course. Baby, stop talking.
I know. I'm just saying.
I don't want you speaking on certain things.
Jalen's concerns over the search for Zion were telling. If his story was truthful and she had died abruptly from an unknown and nonviolent cause, then there would be every reason for him to want her found. Finding Zion would exonerate him. The quicker, the better. Wishing her to be found should also be the sentiment of a loving cousin. Curiously, over and over again, he expressed his relief that no major developments had occurred in the search. As the final days of the landfill project drew near, he referred to it as a search for COVID.
Yeah, just relax. Today is the first, tomorrow's the second. That's what, it was to stop the COVID thing in here. Stop searching for COVID, essentially. So, usually you usually get an update before that. So, but actually nothing. So don't worry about nothing.
Jalen served just over 9 months before being granted early release. He had been placed in a special 90-day incarceration program. This boot camp is designed like a military program in which inmates convicted of certain crimes can better themselves while inside, and in turn, they are rewarded with early release. It had been nearly a year, and Zion had not been found. An indictment for murder had not been sought, and now the prime suspect returned to his home and his family.
Why is this man free? What? I can admit to this and still be let free.
Jalen Brazier's freedom was short-lived. On the 13th of June, 2023, after a 1.5-year investigation, the DPD were finally granted a warrant for arrest.
Okay, real quick, verify your identity, your license and all that.
Yeah, I got who you are, man.
pretty sure if he would not have talked and if he would have a good lawyer right from the beginning, that would not have happened. He would probably got away with murder. That's scary. That's scary and sad, but that's reality. What we see in practice, and it doesn't care whether it is in the U.S., whether it is in Switzerland, in Germany, or in Taiwan. Yeah, not talking to authorities, having a good, real lawyer in on your side, and yeah, law enforcement has difficulties to really get you.
Hey, driver, want your license, man, you know? Yeah, I got it.
The 24-year-old would face charges of second-degree murder, as well as tampering with evidence. Upon his arrest for Zion's murder, 2 additional cell phones were taken. Despite the factory reset that he performed on his device, investigators were able to retrieve some of the activity. His search history had been held in cloud storage. On January 7th, 3 days after dumping his cousin's body in a dumpster, Jalen performed a handful of Google searches. Are garbage trucks also compactors? What is the force of a garbage truck compactor? How do police get your phone history? And how do you know if police are watching you? In addition,
I think I don't have to react or comment anymore. Yeah, it's great. He is bringing himself into jail. Yeah, that's really great.
In addition to these incriminating searches, investigators found that in the months before the incident, Jalen had performed a number of disturbingly suggestive searches for pornographic content containing the words cousin and step-cousin. Experts were able to retrieve the video results of these searches, some of which were reportedly very violent, as well as graphic in nature. As the case approached trial, a preliminary hearing offered more insight into the additional evidence that had emerged since Jalen's release. This hearing also may have offered Jalen's defense team a new theory. At the hearing, Vertez Gonzalez testified that he believed his girlfriend was taking regular medication for epilepsy. He told the court that Zion told him that she had seizures and that without her medication, they became more frequent and severe. In one instance, Vertez saw Zion become momentarily faint, slouching forward before regaining her composure after just a few seconds. This episode, he believed, could have been a seizure.
Have you ever seen her have a seizure?
I think so. Yes, I believe so.
And while she was having the seizure, explain to me what happened.
Just like a little pass out, like that's it, like quick little seizure, like.
And she would pass out. Was she foaming at the mouth or
no?
Okay, she was shaking uncontrollably.
No.
Okay, so she just passed out.
Yeah, just for a quick second, and she like get back straight.
Sierra Milton, whose youngest child was in fact diagnosed with such a condition, testified that this was not the case. Zion had never suffered a seizure. Hundreds of pages of medical records covering years of treatment appeared to support Sierra's assertion. Nonetheless, Jalen Brazier's version of events was now being presented in a new light. Perhaps Zion's condition led to her death suddenly in his living room. Maybe she had a seizure.
Now, there are only 2 people who can say exactly what happened inside of the house that night. One of them is Zion, and she is gone. The other is the defendant, and you will hear that nearly every time he spoke about what happened, his story changed. And although he got rid of Zion's body, you will see that he left behind a trail of digital evidence that is damning and will show you that the circumstances all lead to one and only one explanation for why Zion left his house in the trunk of his car that night, and that's because he murdered her.
She also had a history of seizures
All right, here we see the defense attorney of Mr. Brazier. We do not want to bring stereotypes here, but you must imagine people who are in a jury are usually people that are not fast enough to get out of that obligation, or people that really believe in law and order and in the course of justice, and they tend to be quite conservative. So if you put that into mind, and if you look at the attorney Brown, that could be a problem in that situation. So here again, it's difficult to understand how that can happen. And here in Europe, in Switzerland, in Germany, we don't have juries at all, because the law systems say, well, we need professional judges who find the law, who get active in a court of law. And yeah, the US system is quite different in that regard.
And taking seizure medications. Now, on this particular day, she came over to Jalen's house. They were smoking.
Completely wrong strategy. Even if it has been a seizure and she died because of a seizure, which is very, very unlikely, why does the suspect put her into a trash can? Into a dumpster. It doesn't make any sense. Okay, he says he was freaking out and he was scared, but nobody believes him that woman was family. So completely wrong strategy. No chance whatsoever that you can be successful in a court of law, as to our experience.
Jalen told the police after some time that she had shallow breathing and a faint heartbeat. He checked her to see if she was alive, and she was dead. He then feared, because he was doing drugs, which is still federally illegal, that he could be blamed for something, and he panicked.
Zion's phone disconnected from the network at 1:15 a.m. the same night that she disappeared, and was then lost with her. But the teenager's previous cell phone was safe at home. Sierra Milton handed this device over to police. On it, they found months of correspondence between her and her favorite cousin. The messages he sent ranged from subtle and unsettling to deeply inappropriate. At times, the messages were sexually explicit. Over 4,000 distinct texts were retrieved from Zion's old device. In them, Jalen routinely invited her over to his home while his girlfriend was away. He offered to put her up in his...
Do you remember our thought at the beginning of the video, mobile as the best friend of law enforcement? Here you see that is very incriminating and very strong evidence. So law enforcement loves mobile, and that is why some people say when you commit a crime, don't have your mobile with you, or don't write messages that could incriminate you. It's way more difficult if you just call somebody for law enforcement to get the information. They need to actively monitor you. But with these messages that are not even deleted, yeah, they can bring you into jail.
His basement if she ran away from home. He also advised her on how she might evade police if she ran away once more. Wayne County Assistant Prosecutor Ryan Elsey described the texts as pervasive, at times complimentary of her intelligence and looks, at other times probing in an immature way. For example, he suggested to her that other people thought that they were a couple. He said Katrina, the mother of his children, was jealous of her. Isn't that crazy? Did that make sense to her? He then bragged to Zion about how easily he could get with women. At one point, he called himself a god. Prosecutor Elsie concluded by telling the jury that the 23-year-old had been grooming his younger cousin for years, that he fantasized about her, and that on January 4th, he must have acted on his impulses. This was the twisted motive that led to her death. Jurors heard about how Jalen learned that Katrina was pregnant with their third child on the day that he brought Zion to his house. Messages between the couple showed how he had lied to her about what he was doing after he dropped her off at work. Earlier that day, her nausea and hot spells had led to a trip to the emergency room. Hours later, the nausea resumed. She messaged repeatedly that she felt too ill to remain at work and asked him to pick her up. At 1:25 a.m., she wrote, "I think I need to come home." At 1:26, "I don't feel good." A few minutes later, "My stomach hurts, I feel sick and keep getting hot and cold." Jalen's response was simply, "You can make it, baby." He did finally pick her up that night at nearly 3 a.m. When he did so, she noticed a deep scratch across his collarbone. He told her that the cat had scratched him deep enough to draw blood. Odd, Katrina thought. The cat had never scratched that deep before. The trial lasted 2 full weeks in May 2024. Jalen chose not to testify. The state called 32 witnesses.
Finally,
The defense did not call any. The case against Jalen was largely circumstantial, though it was nonetheless compelling. A forensic
absolutely compelling, even if circumstantial. That is so compelling. You need to be Houdini to get out of that again. That is very, very compelling.
Anthropologist who reviewed Zion's medical history determined that the only condition that she suffered that could possibly have led to her death was asthma, though an asthma attack would present as the exact opposite of what her cousin described. Instead of quietly passing out and experiencing a faint heartbeat, Zion would have been struggling to breathe. It would have been very clear that she was in distress. Vertez repeated his testimony that Zion had told him that she suffered from seizures. He also admitted that his girlfriend was known to fib quite a bit. It seems that Zion had liked to tell stories.
When he brought her to his house late at night on January 4th of 2022, behind the back of his pregnant girlfriend, who was at work at the time, he brought Zion over to his house late that night, and she leaves that house in the trunk of his car on a night where he has an unexplained gash on his collarbone. What do you think happened inside that house that night? She died of COVID? She died of a seizure? There's a claim that he did all this. He did what he did because he was afraid of getting caught for marijuana, afraid of getting busted for pot. You can use your common sense. If you go to a marijuana dispensary, there's not going to be a team of ATF agents waiting to bust you and take you to federal prison for that. It's about the equivalent of a parking ticket.
Any further questions? I don't think so. Case closed.
Ever heard of somebody getting rid of a body to avoid a parking ticket?
Vertez himself said Zion told him specifically she had a history of seizures. The question was asked, were you concerned when you saw this? No, I was not concerned because I knew of a history of seizures she told me about and that she was on medication for it. And his understanding is that if she did not take the medication, the seizures would be that much worse.
Sierra Milton and the rest of Zion's family waited as the jury went into deliberations.
Just so many inconsistencies that, again, hopefully, the end point of this is that they will see those inconsistencies, see through the lies, and see the truth. That he murdered my daughter and he disposed of her with absolute disregard for her life.
The jury returned in only 30 minutes.
I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised at all.
Count 1, how do you find? Guilty. As to count 2, how do you find? Guilty. Now, ladies and gentlemen, please raise your right hand.
Jalen Brazier maintained his innocence of the murder at his sentencing hearing.
I know that the picture's already painted, of course, and once we get to have that in our head, it is what it is. You do. But
You have painted the picture. You alone, you have painted it, and one of the dumbest criminals I have ever seen so far. That is really, he has done all mistakes he could, luckily, but really unbelievable.
Zion was not in any way violent. That wasn't hurt at all. He said that I never wanted to apologize, but I never tried to apologize. That's not true. What I said is I know that my apology is worth nothing because you can't change what I did.
Before announcing his decision on the length of term that Jalen would serve, Judge Donald Knapp outlined the convict's failure to accept any responsibility for the murder, for his disposal of Zion's body, for lying to police, and for causing so many delays in the investigation through his lies. The father had left his 2 young children alone in the house. He manipulated and lied to family, and ultimately, he acted alone. It was unlikely, according to Judge Knapp, that he would ever be rehabilitated. Jalen Brazier was sentenced to 30 to 90 years in prison for the murder and another 5 to 10 years for tampering with evidence.
Okay, that is strong, and that is very good law and order in the US. What do you think what would happen, or would have happened in Europe? He would probably, if he would have had a good lawyer, maybe got 7, 8, 9 years. Worst case scenario, if he would have had a bad lawyer, around 15 years, and then he would be a free man again. That's what Europeans call justice. Yeah, and it's different in the US. If people get convicted of such a crime, they often don't get out of jail at all anymore, and that is probably a good thing.
These terms are to be served consecutively.
My body was trembling. But man, when it was read, and it was just so matter of fact, I was so happy they saw. She was loved. She is loved. She was fought for. And this is the result. So I'm happy. I'm happy that in the end, this is justice.
And for Jalen, you thought you were smart. You tried to be slick. The people saw you for what you are. You ain't. And I hope you never get out.
Zion Foster's body has never been recovered. Over 70 volunteers and law enforcement searched the landfill for nearly 6 months before finally admitting defeat. As of the publication of this video, Jalen remains at an intake facility in Wayne County, awaiting his placement in a general population prison. Thank you for joining me to take a look at this tragic case. A special thank you to Bex in Wonderland for becoming the latest member of...
Okay, a really tragic case. Luckily, we had parents here, good parents that were interested in their children. They knew what Zion was doing, to whom she was in contact with, and who really cared for her, and did not stop to fight. And also, fortunately, we had a criminal who did not act professionally, who talked a lot to law enforcement. Inconsistencies emerged, and he was brought to justice. Unfortunately, sometimes we have different cases in practice where we have real professional criminals, and it's very difficult to bring them behind bars. All right, thank you so much for watching. I'm Dr. Ebner. It has been a pleasure to comment that great video from Kevin. Please feel free to subscribe. Please feel free to give us your comments. We would love to engage with you in a conversation. And thank you very much again for watching.